All right, let's talk about something that many of us have in our kitchens right now, a simple cup of tea. We hear all the time that it's good for you, right? But what does the scientific research actually say about that? Is there real evidence behind the claims? Well, today we're going to dive into the data and find out. You know, in a world that's just full of complicated diets and wellness trends, it's easy to wish for something a little more straightforward. We're all looking for simple ways to feel a bit better. So you have to wonder, could a habit as ordinary as drinking tea really make a meaningful difference to our health?
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at what's actually in a cup of tea that makes it so interesting. Then we'll see what the big picture evidence shows. After that, I'll introduce a really helpful way to think about this, the tea toolkit. We'll also cover benefits for your mind and mood, some really important words of caution, and we'll finish up with a clear daily takeaway.
Okay, let's get right into it. To really understand tea's potential, we have to start with the basics. We have to ask, what is it about this drink that has researchers so curious in the first place? Well, it's not magic, it's chemistry. The health benefits we hear about all come from these things that researchers call bioactive compounds. These are the active ingredients, the real powerhouses in tea, like polyphenols and L-theanine. Think of them as antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. They can have real protective effects on our bodies. So, we know tea has these beneficial compounds, but what happens when you look at huge populations of people drinking tea regularly over many, many years? What does the big picture research tell us? Take a look at this number, 4%. Now, what does that mean? Well, a massive 2020 meta-analysis, that's a study of studies, 39 of them in this case, found that for each additional cup of tea a person drinks per day, their risk of cardiovascular mortality drops by about 4%. Now, that might sound small day to day, but imagine that effect compounding over an entire lifetime. That starts to become pretty significant. And that 4% is really just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. When you zoom out and look at all the research as a whole, the scientific consensus is actually very clear. A regular habit of drinking tea is generally a very positive thing for your health, especially when it comes to your heart and your metabolism. But here's where it gets really interesting, because not all teas are created equal. To really understand their different benefits, it helps to think of them in a whole new way. Let's imagine we're building a health toolkit. So instead of asking, is tea good for you, a much better question is, which tea is the right tool for the job? You see, green, black, oolong, they all come from the exact same plant, but the way they're processed after being picked completely changes their chemical makeup, and that gives each of them a unique set of strengths. Here's a quick look at the main tools in our kit. You can see right away that green tea is kind of the all-rounder, the multi-tool, linked to everything from cognitive health to your heart. Black tea, on the other hand, seems to be more of a specialist, really zeroing in on vascular function. Let's break down a couple of the most powerful tools one by one. Okay, green tea really is the superstar of the research. Get this, one major analysis linked it to a staggering 37% lower odds of cognitive impairment. That is huge, and it doesn't stop there. Other huge reviews consistently show it helps improve cholesterol, manage blood sugar, and even lower blood pressure. It truly is the Swiss Army knife in our toolkit. Now, black tea is more of a specialist. Its main strength, according to the science, seems to be in improving how well our blood vessels work. It can also give you a little boost in attention and alertness, and this shows a really key detail in the research. Studies find it can be protective against heart disease, but specifically at a moderate intake, less than 4 cups a day. So why the difference between them? It all comes down to processing. Green tea leaves are heated quickly, which prevents them from oxidizing and preserves these amazing compounds called catechins. Black tea leaves, however, are allowed to fully oxidize, which transforms those catechins into a whole different set of polyphenols. That one little difference in production creates 2 totally distinct tools for our health. And what about the other tools in the kit? Well, teas like oolong and white tea are showing some real promise. Oolong seems to be particularly good at helping with fat oxidation, and white tea is packed with those catechins. But it's important to be clear, the human evidence for these just isn't as strong yet as it is for green and black tea. So think of these as the emerging tools to keep an eye on. So we've talked a lot about physical health, your heart, your metabolism, but it turns out the benefits don't stop there. The research also points to some absolutely fascinating effects on our mental well-being. Just look at this. A large study of over 13,000 older adults found that daily tea drinkers were less likely to have depressive symptoms. And what's really compelling here is that while green tea and fermented teas like black tea were beneficial, the absolute strongest link was found with floral teas. Isn't that interesting? And that finding leads right into this. A 2023 review looks specifically at teas for stress and sleep, and it found that several herbal and floral options, things like chamomile, lavender, jasmine, may help reduce feelings of stress and anxiety with just 1 to 2 cups a day. The research here is still pretty new, but it's very promising.
Okay, now before we all run off to put the kettle on, we have to talk about something crucial. Because as with anything, context is key. To get all the benefits and avoid any potential risks, the research offers some very important words of caution.
First, and this is so important, temperature. Let your tea cool down a bit. Consistently drinking it scalding hot, that's above 60 Celsius or 140 Fahrenheit, is linked to a higher risk of esophageal cancer. So just let it sit. Second, brewing tea very strongly can interfere with how your body absorbs iron from food. And finally, be really careful with high-dose green tea extract supplements, the pills. They can cause liver and stomach problems for some people. The science is pretty clear here. Stick with the brewed tea.
So after going through all this evidence, unpacking the toolkit, and looking at the cautions, what does it all boil down to? What's the practical, daily takeaway?
Here it is. This quote really synthesizes it all beautifully. For most adults, making a habit of drinking 1 to 4 cups of brewed tea each day at a safe temperature is a well-supported strategy for better health. It is consistently linked to real, measurable benefits for your heart, your metabolism, and maybe even your brain and your mood.
So the research is clear. That simple, humble cup of tea holds some remarkable potential. The evidence is in, and the health toolkit is on the table. The only question left now is, which tool are you going to choose for your health today?